Welcome to live chat. All right.
Hi.
Hey everybody, we're doing a live video tonight, in part because our lives have been so busy the last 3 weeks now that we haven't had time to sit down and actually edit. We have tons of footage to edit for videos, for YouTube, but it's going to be coming up soon once life calms down.
Yeah, but we needed to get on here and wanted to make sure we got on here to say a huge thank you to everyone who reached out to us, who left sweet and thoughtful messages and prayers. As soon as we posted about our first few days in the hospital with Tucker, we were floored at the responses and the well wishes that we got from so many of you guys. And that we were awful at responding, and so I'm sorry about that, but we did read every single message, and that really helped the days go by. Just seeing one positive message after another, it really meant so much to us. And so thank you if you said anything. We saw it and we really appreciated it.
Yeah, so thank you guys all very much. For those of folks who haven't heard, this is not everyone's heard. We haven't really put up much on YouTube, but about 3 weeks ago now,
it was the 23rd, Saturday the 23rd.
There we go. So Saturday the 23rd, we had a birthday party, and our little boy Tucker got a hold of tiki torch fuel. It was a simple mistake. There was tons of other little kids there, but he got into that, decided it smelled nice, and drank it. And it's been a real rough road since then. He actually had a lot of complications from tiki torch fuel ingestion, and so we just wanted to hop on here first, as Jenny said, to say thank you. We got we put a couple posts on social media just to share what was going on, and we got just this massive response from everyone, sharing their, like you said, their well wishes and prayers and thoughts, and we really appreciate that because it was a pretty daggum difficult time for us.
So apparently ingesting tiki torch fuel or gasoline, it's fairly common, unfortunately, with children around 2 years of age. And according to the doctors, Tucker wouldn't have really had any complications if he had simply swallowed it. We found out that because Tucker coughed some of it up and then threw some of it up, it got into his lungs, and that's where the scary part came into play.
Yeah, it was an aspiration concern and turned into a big, they called it acute respiratory failure. So yeah, it was very serious very quickly. Yeah, and actually, the first couple of hours was actually kind of calm. We didn't know how much he drank. We turned around for a minute and turned back around. He's coughing with the fuel all over his chin and on his shirt. And so we didn't know if he drank it or not.
So we cleaned him up, and he was coughing a little, so we figured let's give him some water and dinner, and he ate. He was still coughing a little bit. We gave him a bath. He even went to bed just coughing a little bit. We weren't scared at that point. And then he woke up screaming after just about 15 minutes in bed, and he was breathing super quickly. And then he threw up, and that was when we immediately decided to go to the hospital. And they weren't too scared initially. The fast breathing, they were saying it makes sense, but it wasn't. It wasn't until Tucker stopped breathing for a few seconds that the doctor really jumped into action.
Yeah.
It's a little windy.
Anybody on the live feed, if you can't hear us, please let us know. There's some wind over here. We can step aside somewhere less windy if we need to. Sorry.
No, it's okay.
But yeah, no, Jenny's getting choked up because we were kind of reliving it, talking about it. We haven't talked about it a whole lot. That first night was just, it was hell. The first night we got to the our local hospital, and we do want to share this with you guys because hopefully it might help somebody else who has either a child or a grandchild. If young kids are Tucker's age, 2-year-olds, they put everything in their mouth. And so anyways, but we're living 5 minutes from a pretty good hospital, hospital that you were born at. right?
Yeah.
And so anyways, we kind of felt relieved that, hey, the hospital's nearby. So we rushed over. Tucker started vomiting. We rushed over there. We got checked in, and initially the first hour there, they had Tucker hooked up to some monitors, but they weren't really overly worried. But yeah, then they called it an acute apnea. Tucker stopped breathing for about 5 seconds. He had a respiratory rate of about 80 breaths a minute. So it was really scary. And then he quit breathing for a moment, and the doctors happened to be there and saw that, and just like all of a sudden went from like, okay, we're monitoring you, to now, boom, you are our #1 patient. They wheeled him into the ER, and they immediately began to sedate Tucker and put a tube, an intubation, an ET tube into his throat, and put him on a ventilator to manually breathe for him. And it was scary because there was 10 or more people in there. I guess we were naive, thinking that, hey, it's a hospital, they can take care of anything, but they weren't really equipped for a pediatric emergency. And so they were nervous, and you know, we're kind of relying on them to be the caretakers of your child.
You don't want to see the doctors nervous. But yeah, so they had to sedate and intubate him. And I think the hardest part for us at that point was just seeing him completely immobile. He was gone for a little while. His eyes were closed. You know, he wasn't moving on his own.
Yeah, there was a ventilator breathing for him. They had the monitors hooked up to make sure he was getting adequate oxygen and CO2 exchange, that he was breathing okay. The numbers weren't as good as they liked, but they weren't dropping. There wasn't like this massive, you know, feeling like he was going to pass, but he was sedated, and they did an awesome job, but they weren't accustomed to this kind of emergency.
Yeah. And so right after he was intubated, we were told that he needed to be transported either to Arnold Palmer Hospital or Nemours Children's Hospital, and we went with Nemours, and Tucker was...
side note, thank you, Rachel, if you see this. Good friends of ours.
Yeah,
We got little kids. Rachel's a nurse, and we're like, hey, if your kid was in this situation, where would you take your kid to? And it was nice to be able to call, kind of phone a friend, and say, hey.
Side note, I have to thank Jesse so much. He took care of all of the paperwork. He did all of the insurance. I was not letting go of Tucker when we got to the hospital. So Jesse kept his cool, and he was able to phone a friend and figure out which hospital we should take him to. He handled all of that. You even wore Tucker's wristband because I wasn't letting go of Tucker. So Nemours, he was airlifted to the hospital, and we weren't allowed to go with him.
Yeah, and it was kind of weird because we were, as we were like in the ER and they're preparing Tucker for transport, we're kind of envisioning ourselves hopping on the back of an ambulance and going on the transport with our son to the children's hospital. We were kind of happy it was an air evac, which is faster, but then we realized that he's on his own, and it was a really scary time.
Yeah, to watch your baby who is completely sedated be wheeled into a helicopter and you're not going with him. I don't ever want to do that again. But they were phenomenal. Those the medics in the helicopter were amazing. They called as soon as they got Tucker into the hospital room. They called our cell phone and they said, "Hey, his stats are fine. He was perfect on the flight." And we were just yelling in the truck as soon as we got that phone call. We were almost to the hospital, but just knowing, you know, that 35-ish minute time span that we went without any contact and seeing Tucker anything, that meant a lot to us. So I won't say their names on here, but we really appreciate you guys for making that phone call.
Yeah, it was the elephant was off of our back at that point, because the minute we put Tucker in the hospital, or actually, well, side note, we put him in the helicopter, and we had to step back out of the clear zone for the helicopter to take off. for about 3 seconds we stood there watching, like we're watching the aircraft take off, like we used to. That's kind of a standard thing. You watch a helicopter take off. It's kind of neat. Wait a minute, what are we
That's
doing?
Our baby in there. We gotta go.
We gotta get our butts to the hospital he's being transported to. So we hopped in a truck and we were driving expeditiously. I'll say that. As safely as we could drive, speed wise. And the drive to Orlando, we were just really kind of just a lot of introspective thinking. And but yet that phone call, it just the weight off our shoulders was immense.
Yeah.
And we got to the hospital 10 minutes later and got there and checked in, and just knowing that he had gotten to this higher level care facility for children, it I guess put us at ease, I guess, right?
I guess. I don't remember feeling any ease, but
not at ease, but it just took a lot of the weight off.
Yeah.
I guess it de-escalated the situation a little bit.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah. Knowing he was on the ground, everything was fine. As fine as could be, I guess is a better way to put it.
And yeah, and then so the first couple days was just he was sedated for I think for 3 days, 2.5 days.
Sunday, 2.5 days.
Yeah, 2.5 days. He was sedated with the tube, and he was hooked up to a machine that was breathing for him.
Yeah, and it was awful. It was horrifying. Tucker wasn't there, but I think the best thing of those few days. So they had Tucker pretty heavily sedated for his size. He would keep fighting his way out of the sedation, which isn't necessarily a good thing, but we love to see it because he was fighting. He wanted that tube out of his mouth. He wanted to wake up. So as uncomfortable as it was to knowing, hey, our child is aware and he's feeling this tube in his mouth and he might know that he's in a weird situation, we were like, hell yeah, kid, rock on, keep fighting, keep trying to bust out of that sedation because we need you to come out of it soon. Exactly.
Knowing he had that strength was good, because the doctors were worried that once they extubate, they take the tube out, you know, the kids in that situation need to be able to step up and
work on their own again.
Yeah, and so we were happy to see. It was sad though, because the minute Tucker would come out of sedation or kind of break free, immediately his gag reflex would kick in. He'd start, you know, scrambling around. We'd have to, you know, us and the nurses would try to comfort him and hold him down. It's called a bolus. They'd give him kind of a little extra shot of the sedation formula to get him back into sedation. So definitely pulled at your heartstrings, but it was good to see that he still had that drive for sure. And then, that was day 3, and then the next week, just kind of, it was a lot of ups and downs.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
2 steps forward, 1 step back.
So from the fluid that he aspirated that he got into his lungs, he developed what they call a sterile pneumonia. So he began fighting fevers and lack of appetite from pneumonia. He was put back on a feeding tube, the tube through his nose, because he wasn't eating. He wasn't moving around like he used to. He was very mad at all of us, just wanted nothing to do with us when he was finally extubated and awake. But yeah, it really just felt like it wasn't going to end. Our 4th day there, they kept saying maybe just the next day. And then we were finally told that it's probably going to be whole nother week. And so, not that we were excited, but one of the perks about our home being in an RV was Jesse was able to drive back, get our RV, and Nemours Children's Hospital on the campus, they have a Ronald McDonald House. And the Ronald McDonald House put into RV parking spaces with the electrical pole. And anyway, we were able to park our RV, our house, in the hospital parking lot with power. And we didn't stay there. We stayed in the hospital room with Tucker, but it was really nice to be able to take an hour and go home and get Tucker's little stuffed animal and just go and sit and breathe and not have, you know, the monitors beeping at you. It was, yeah, that was really nice.
Yeah, it was good too. We were offered the I guess the option to use the Ronald McDonald House to kind of have as a base camp to go back and forth, and it was very generous. You know, Nemours, we can't thank Nemours Children's Hospital enough for their services and support. But there was a lot of other kids there that were also in hard times. And we thought it was kind of cool that we could actually not need that room that they were offering us, let somebody else who might need it more. And even better, I'll show you right here's the RV, you know, and have the RV maybe 5 minutes away from Tucker's room. So that was very handy, like you said, just to go there, recollect your thoughts, and yeah, just kind of restart, I guess, re-energize. And yeah, right, so there were 7 more days after he was extubated of that. So
of fevers and trying to get him to eat and just trying to get him back to his feisty little self.
And Tucker is such a rascal, this little guy. like all this from day 1 up to day 10, he did not want to use his legs. He didn't want to stand up and walk or anything. And
it wasn't a red flag to us because the medication that they use to sedate him, it makes your bones, your muscles a little lazy. It makes you, they don't like to use the word lethargic, but it kind of makes you lethargic. And he'd been in a bed for so long that we just, you know, figured he'd get back to it once we got him home. And the day we were being discharged, the doctor came in and she went over all of his medicine with me, and she said, well, do you have any questions before I sign the discharge papers? And I said, well, yeah, what are your tips or tricks to getting him up and moving again, up and walking? You know, he'll push off on his legs, but he's not back to walking yet. And she did not like that. She said, what do you mean he's not back to walking yet? He was walking before he got into the hospital, right? I said, yeah, he was just about running around. She's like, we need to take an x-ray. You guys can't leave yet. So
yeah, the day we were discharged, it went from, yeah, this morning we're going to discharge it to, well, wait a minute, we have a couple things, we're going to discharge you about 2 o'clock.
So at 4:30 in the afternoon, the doctor came back and she said, okay, the x-rays look fine. I don't like that he's not walking yet, but probably when you get him home and comfortable, he'll start moving his legs and he should be fine within a couple days. If not, you guys need to bring him back. Y'all, I'm not kidding. She walked out of the room. Tucker crawled across the mat we were sitting on and stood up next to the couch. Hadn't walked the whole time. I mean, we would try to stand him up and everything, and he would kick and fuss and scream. This kid, man.
He was a rascal for sure. But we were happy to see him up on his legs.
It was so good. And as soon as he started walking around too, he was laughing again, he was smiling, he was giggling, and he hadn't really done that the whole time. And so he just needed to get up and moving. He just needed to hear that doctor say, okay, you can go.
Yeah, yeah. So we've been home for a couple days now. We're actually over, this is Rockledge, Florida, but we've been over in Cocoa Beach, Florida, but this is our hometown area where all of our families are, so it's great. We have all the grandparents are loving on Tucker. If anyone wants to check out Instagram, today we put a photo or two.
Yeah, we made it to the beach.
Yeah, back
Tucker's natural habitat.
So it's really good being back to normal, and yeah, we can't complain.
No.
Yeah.
No, it was the scariest thing we've had to go through as parents, for sure. There were a few days of complete uncertainty, but it's something that kids do, unfortunately. We didn't see him. It was not even 15 seconds and he downed some tiki torch fluid.
Yeah, for those of you out there with any little ones around, from EMT training, I have the poison control phone number in my cell phone contacts, and that was nice because when this went down, you're kind of flustered, you're not thinking calm and orderly. It was nice to be able to pull up my phone, type in poison or P for poison, and pull up the number and call right away.
Yeah.
Yeah, for anyone who does have to, hopefully not, but anyone who does experience this, ingesting hydrocarbons, so that's almost all fuels are hydrocarbon. The pH is about the same as our bodies, so it's not necessarily a big deal.
Crazy.
Like if you siphon gas, you get a little bit of gas, you know, you choke, whatever. I think many of us have probably tasted some fuel at some point. It doesn't taste good, but it's not going to harm you. The problem though for Tucker, and just for those of you to be aware of, is the aspiration. That's when it goes into your stomach and you cough or somehow or vomit, and it gets back up into the lungs.
It goes down the wrong tube.
Yeah.
Basically, right? When you inhale fluid, when you're taking a drink and it goes down the wrong tube, that's exactly what happened to Tucker. And because this hydrocarbon fuel is
it damages the lungs. So his lungs were damaged. They weren't, essentially kind of like if you've seen like the oil slick on water. If you put fuel in water, there's kind of the rainbow colors. It just makes the lungs inefficient, not able to exchange CO2 and oxygen. So without getting too caught up in those details, just know that ingesting, it's not necessarily a big deal, but it's the aspiration into the lungs.
Well, it's a big deal.
Serious.
It's a big deal. I mean, if your child drinks gas, please call poison control. But
100%.
Our situation would have been far less scary if it hadn't gotten into his lungs.
Yeah, and I think half the time, or just over half the time, kids don't aspirate.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the odds are against this happening. But yeah, so that was our experience. We just wanted to, primarily, we wanted to share what happened. For those of you that were sending messages and stuff, thank you very much. We've been so busy. We just keep taking care of Tucker. We didn't have time to really put all this out there, all the events. So we wanted to put it on here for those of you that were interested to know what happened, but especially just to say a very heartfelt thank you for all of the support. Yeah, it meant a lot. So now we're back to normal. Wednesday, in 3 days from now, we were supposed to be traveling on a big international trip, a big surprise, which we are going to share with you on YouTube.
Yep. Yeah, we've mentioned it a few times that we have some pretty exciting things lined up for this year, and the most exciting one was supposed to kick off on Wednesday, but we have opted to not completely forego. We've opted to postpone it a few weeks. We want to make sure Tucker is 110% again before we do any big traveling.
Yeah.
So we're still going to announce that just in a few weeks.
Oh yeah, stay tuned. But here in a couple weeks, maybe 3 weeks, we'll have some big exciting news as life gets back to normal and we kick off these big plans. So is that everything?
I think so.
If anyone commented, I'm sorry, I haven't been looking at comments. And but I'll try to. And actually, yeah, if anyone has questions, feel free to post questions. I'll look back and I'll answer questions if you have questions, especially if you want to know, how to avoid this problem or take care of loved ones. But yeah, I think that was right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys so much for all the love and support, and we're so happy to report Tucker has a clean bill of health.
Tucker is back.
Back in town. Whoa, Nelly.
Yes, he is doing much better.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, so that's it. Like I said, feel free to send a comment. We'll answer any questions. And next time around, we won't be doing a live video. We'll hopefully have some of our regular content coming as life resumes back to normal.
Yay! Never been so excited for normal.
All right, everybody, take care.
Okay. Thank you guys so much.
We'll see you next time.
Bye.
If I can hit off.
Oh, you guys are stuck with us. There we go.
It's an extended version.